right, Tyrus? They basically had the border open. We know what they're doing. They're shipping people all around the country. Right. They're calling them newcomers. What good is? It's almost bad for him to go down the border. It looks bad.
It's bad if you're not on their side of things. Like what Kat just said was too brilliant for them. Like they're literally saying split the diff. Like we're gonna look tough in front of the border, but we don't want to upset our progressives, so we'll go down there and look tough and call them newcomers, but we'll do it tough, so everybody will be happy.
Yeah.
And Kat gave them an out to even the way to do it, and like say, oh, it's an old school thing. No, that's what he went to do. You're telling a guy who can't remember one foot goes in front of the other to split the diff, which means you have to know two things and make us convinced that it's one. So that's what he was doing, and he did it horribly because he can't anymore. So when he goes to these places, they're just at this point because they can't say we are good with this situation. Our side of the street, the Democrats, we are fine. We call them newcomers. We have no problem with open borders. We are fine with this. That's why we got rid of all the executive orders, because I could do it myself if I wanted to. Yeah. I don't want to. I stopped them for a reason. This is how we look at our version of America. And hashtag newcomers. You should remember that and vote accordingly, America. Period. You don't need Joe Biden's speech from Joe Biden to know where he stands. His actions, if you have to be blind not to see it. If you are blind, I'm sorry. But you can see it.
And everybody's seeing it, Todd. So they're seeing it in the cities. We're seeing blue cities. People see this influx coming in. Even people who kind of sympathize with Biden's border policy. Now they realize, like, what we're going to do. We're kind of in up to our neck. And at some point, they can't turn off the spigot because they've already said the borders are open.
Right. And I think Tyrus really nailed the point. This is a fundamental problem within this White House. This language of newcomers popping out, no matter what Joe Biden does, trying to look tough, it's all of that because fundamentally, this is their vision, to use Tyrus's phrase. What upsets me most about that, it's almost like they are treating these illegal migrants as freshmen at orientation. They call them newcomers, they give them their ID, their phone card, their dorm, and much like how they're treating student loans, the American taxpayers are on the hook for it. There's a common college migrant tide, and that is a huge problem, not only for Joe Biden and the election, because the cities are starting to realize, hey, we're getting screwed here. We know this guy in office. We thought we were going to get a lot of good handouts, and our budgets are getting decimated by these illegals. But it's a fundamental problem for America, because this is not how our system works. We help people when they're in need, but it's temporary. It's not permanent. And what we're doing for these illegal migrants, foreign citizens, by the way, we need to make that point, is hurting our citizens. And there's no end in sight, Tom. That's the issue. This is go back to the college analogy. I love your college analogy. This is, you go to college for 4, maybe 5 years, these migrants are going to be on the dole permanently, and that's a huge issue. I understand when somebody comes here legally, they get some assistance right off the bat, but the goal is to get them in the system, working, being productive members. We've seen so many TikTok videos of these migrants saying, hey, I'm here, I'm willing, totally for life. They love it. That's the problem, Mackie. What are we going to do about it? That's right.
Tom, I hate that college analogy. At my orientation, my roommate's dad tried to introduce me to co-eds. So embarrassing, you know. I could get rejected on my own. But I'll say this, the left is great at euphemisms, like it's a border bill that gives discretionary power to the Homeland Security chief that we're trying to impeach right now for not doing his job. It's the same thing I do on first dates. You know, you don't want them to know about the past. You only want them to know about the good things you're doing now, except unlike President Biden, I can hold in my farts.
That's right. Okay, up next, he used football jargon after his client's plea bargain. Was a lawyer too dramatic in defending a football fanatic? He's representing a thief who loves the Chiefs. A diehard Kansas City Chiefs fan named Xavier Babadar pleaded guilty this week in a string of bank robberies. He also pleaded guilty to having a name that sounds like a skin condition. That's right. He admitted to stealing more than $800,000 from 11 banks in 7 states. He even stole a few pens after breaking their tiny little chains. Xavier found fame in Chiefs Kingdom for showing up to all his games in a full costume. Now, instead of hanging on the gridiron, he faces 50 years behind iron bars. It could be worse. He could have been sentenced to 50 years of watching the Jets play. But what's the best way for a lawyer to defend the honor and reputation of a self-described Chiefs-aholic? How about use as many football references as possible?
Let's see that. From the beginning of this case, folks, the government has been blitzing, and Xavier's pocket was collapsing. But today, Xavier stepped into the pressure. We know that he doesn't give up. We know that if he stumbled and he fell, he didn't let his knee touch the ground.
Somewhere in heaven, even John Madden is saying, whoa, tone it down.
Listen, that is the sweetest, most dedicated lawyer. I wouldn't let him represent me for 1 second, but if I was being told bad news, I'd want it from him. Like, his client was so guilty. The best thing he could do was give him a cool press conference. The fact that we're even calling this dude talking about his pastime, he's a bank robber. Like, that should be bank robber. Who gives a what he did on Saturdays and Sundays? Like, why in this country have we need to know everyone's backstory. That's because of this behavior is why there's no Cyrus and Tim like that. Because our whole thing was based on we told you the backstory. And now the media is taking that away from us. Because now we know what his joint was. That the little bull was actually a bank robber. That's right. He paid $800,000. If you earn $800,000 in your career, you are beyond successful. The fact that we are not calling him a bank robber is America get back to basic bank robber. Oh, by the way, for later tonight, the entertainment section, he went to Chiefs games.
But Cat, I mean, that's what he wants to be known for. That's where his heart is, and Hart is a Chiefs fan.
So, he actually might be onto something with this, because it's crazy, right? Don't get me wrong, but from what I understand, that town really loves football, right? I don't know. It could work. Maybe one juror would be like, yeah, I love that guy, right? And here's the thing. If it doesn't work, based on that video being so crazy, you can play it as potential evidence that he did not have adequate representation at trial.
He could.
Yeah, ineffective. Thank you, Lawyer Todd.
But then, you know, Cat has an interesting theory. He's putting it out there because then the potential jury pool, you know, he knows he's going to be in good standing if he looks over and one of the people in the jury is dressed like a wolf.
He's definitely the sympathetic wolf vote. I like your ineffective assistance of counsel approach. That's a good call. I view this from, hey, I went to law school with, potential lawyers. We're not cool people, so if you try to be cool, you're going to fail. As I discovered, 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. every morning, I thought. But the bigger issue, to Tyler's point, not only did he fail with his verbal shenanigans, this lawyer, he picked the worst possible case. This is public intoxication, or maybe a few puns would be funny. In the words of the prosecutor, quote, a public crime spree. There also, when you refer to pleading guilty, there's no football analogy to pleading guilty. There's no football equivalent to pleading guilty. So maybe avoid the football puns here. It was an abject fail. Maybe I'm up to something, Tim. I like where you went there. Guilty.
To be honest with you, a punt's kind of a forfeit, Briz. You give it still talking about his damn football. This man was a mass bank robber.
I know it.
He was literally going to buy the Chiefs and he had 4 years on the streets.
So our club was going to sell to the wolves. Right? He was going to sell to the wolves. Joe, I know you're going to defend this guy.
Well, I just thought maybe he and his lawyer always talk in football terms.
Yes.
So what if he robbed banks in football terms? I need to intercept that deposit. Nobody call an audible. I've got a shotgun. Anyone who gives me trouble will be the first down. Inside the red zone. After the sentencing, the lawyer should be saying, my client is going to jail. I hope he has good protection in case his cellmate tries a spread formation pitch to the back.
Joe! Craig's not here, Joe! Craig's not. We'll answer.
It's a good play.
We'll answer your questions.
Okay, Phil.
Sau đó thì cái phần này bạn chỉ bấm bên cạnh lại đây không phải như thế này các bạn nghĩ như thế này và những cái chuyện mình sẽ xin đẩy giấy hình cho
thì mình sẽ đụng cái hình như thế này các bạn. Đây, một cái hình như thế này. Rồi thì tiếp theo các bạn sẽ tiếp tục sẽ làm lại phần bên này luôn. Đầu tiên là các bạn sẽ cắt cái nó vào trong một xíu của mình. Đây, các bạn sẽ gấp nó lại cái này cho mình nha. Rồi bên này mình cũng sẽ làm tương tự thôi. Cắt cái xíu vào trong.
Canceled comedian Jim Florentine joins me now. So, Jim, were you like at the club ready to go up when they gave you the hook?
No, I wasn't even booked till October. I just got booked 2 weeks ago, and tickets were on sale. They were selling, and all of a sudden we get this email: no, you're canceled, along with the 3 other comics.
What were the activists so upset about? Had they ever even heard you before?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, they didn't even see my act, what I'm doing now. I talk about my pronouns. I talk about people of color. I talk about transitioning. I'm going to put a pink streak in my hair, so I don't know why they canceled me.
Do you feel upset by this, or do you think this is going to help your career?
I think it's actually going to help. At first I laughed about it, but then I got all these different venues in the area go, we'll have you there, we'll have you there. So there's a club 20 minutes away to Tacoma Comedy Club goes, we'll have you. So they booked me for that weekend, which is great.
Have you ever actually had one of these local activists come up to you in person, face to face, and said anything to you, or is it usually just anonymous?
Never. They never do. I perform in New York City all the time. One of the biggest liberal cities. No one's ever said anything, ever. I don't care if they don't like the joke. They just don't like it.
Or you don't have to go to the show. I don't understand how a show, which is a closed building, would in any way affect anything in this so-called community.
Especially all 4 of us have our own following, so all of our fans were going to come to that club. It wasn't like people just going to walk off the street. They researched the comics, and they're going to have side-by-side with comics. All of our fans were going to come to that club, so I don't see what the problem was going to be.
So your fans were going to come to the club, spend money in the city, buy drinks in this town, help this neighborhood economically, and they said, you know what, I don't think you're that funny and you're offensive. Let's just lose money.
Exactly. And maybe stepping some homeless poop, too. Our fans would have done that, too. But other than that, it's just crazy. It's not like we got canceled before, so I get it. All the clubs have done it. Plus, I've been married. I got divorced. That's like getting canceled. That's true.
And Gutfeld,
at least I still,
Gutfeld
I lose half my cash. My Gutfeld canceled me. Plus, I lose half my cash and my big screen TV. So,
doesn't matter.
20 minutes away now. Cancel pictures of my big shake. It was just inside that live. You got, 5
You're going to have your better venue, and they can have their ethos. How about that? Jim, thank you so much.
I don't even know what that word means. I don't even know what ethos means.
I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I winked, and I think I might have gotten it right. Thank you so much. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
No, Charlie. In America, or elsewhere in the world, you're not allowed to hide this thing. It's just not allowed. Sorry.
Yeah, you would think that might not need to even be explained.
Well, this guy actually did a lecture at Princeton, so he's among our esteemed academic types.
I don't compliment the Southern Europeans enough, but the Italians, have you seen the video where the climate people tried to glue their hand to the pavement and they just go pull them off? That's who we need.
Yeah, well, when it comes to...
Or you could get... I envision, like, putting cattle guards in the front of your truck that would not hurt anyone, but just sort of, like,
move people out of the way.
Yeah, like plow them out of the way so
Yeah.
that people could get to work. there's a way to plow people without hurting them, I would do it.
Again, other things put on the internet probably saying that you're upset you can't hijack planes with innocent people on them. Not the greatest idea. That does it for us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern for the Day Weekend Show. Liberty is tomorrow night.
Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Saturday. One of the reasons I love doing these shows on Fox is it gives me an opportunity not only to introduce you to some stellar individuals, but to talk about history, philosophy, economics, and all these things that are generally not discussed on platforms like this. American history. Maybe I would do a show on American history every week. But we're going to use tonight's show. It's going to be very exciting, I think, very informative, to discuss on American history. Why? Because there are reprobates, historical illiterates on other channels who want you to believe certain things that are not true. Why? Well, mostly because they're not very graphic. And so, as I said the other day, part of my job here is to unravel what they do. But more importantly, in the next 15 minutes, you're going to learn more about American history than you probably have ever learned, certainly more than you've ever learned on TV or radio, more than you ever learned. We're going to start by using as a foil a reprobate who is a political reporter in Washington, D.C., who appeared on MSNBC. Well, we all go to get facts and information, don't we? And I want to deal with this because this is a frontal assault on Christianity. We've had a frontal assault on Judaism and Jews for the last many months in this country. It's been given voice by MSNBC and CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the usual platforms. But now they're pushing this idea of Christian nationalism, which they're trying to link up with the Klan and things of that sort. We in this country, they abuse their authority, they lie, and they try and preach the radical left agenda. How about we do a little bit of history tonight and straighten things out? So this is from last week, a Politico reporter on MSNBC, a terrible, poisonous combination. Go.
There's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalism is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God. The problem with that is that they are determining men are determining what God is telling them. And in the past, that so-called natural law is, it's a pillar of Catholicism. Catholicism, for instance, has been used for good in social justice campaigns. Martin Luther King evoked it in talking about civil rights. But now you have an extremist element of conservative Christians who say that this applies specifically to issues including abortion, gay marriage, and it's going much further than that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the sanctimony that the left has for their speech. John Locke wrote a number of essays and treatises, including the second treatise on government. This had an enormous impact on the founders of this country. Other historians have looked very carefully at the pamphlets that were written at the time. Thomas Paine was a pamphlet here, but there were many. And John Locke was cited more than any other pamphleteer. And why? John Locke talked about the free will, the individual, unalienable rights, natural law, and in some ways he was borrowing from Aristotle. Aristotle talked about two characters of the law. He talked about natural law, which is a universal law. In other words, murder is wrong whether man passes a law or not. It's wrong in America, it's wrong in China. The fact that governments don't follow it and individuals don't follow it is a different story. But morality morality does not come from man. Morality comes from a higher authority. And then there's what he called particular law. What's particular law? Law made by man. So there's universal truth, universal law, God-given, particular laws created by man. Some are just, some are unjust, some are democratic, some are authoritarian, whatever it is. This is basic stuff for those of us who've studied it over the decades. And the founders of our country, during the Revolutionary period, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, what did they rely on? Who did they rely on? They relied on Aristotle. They relied on a great Roman senator by the name of Cicero. They relied on John Locke. They relied on Montesquieu. They relied on a gentleman by the name of Sidney. They relied on all these great thinkers, Aquinas. That's what they relied on. Why? Because really, this is about Western Enlightenment. Western Enlightenment. This is about a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And yet we're told every day that it's not. We're told every day that this is an unjust country. We're told every day that it's about white privilege. We're told every day something that's a lie. Well, I would remind them that Karl Marx was white too. So was their hero Franklin Roosevelt. He was white too. So is their hero Joe Biden, who's actually translucent, if you want to know the truth. But for instance, Aristotle wrote Nicomachean Ethics. In one of his essays on that, he talks about this. John Locke, the second treatise on government. Virtually every single founder read that book. Sidney on discourses concerning government. Cicero on the Republic and on the laws. And I could go on and on and on. It's all there for the understanding. Where she, Politico, MSNBC, and the bobbleheads that are just saying yes, 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 who do they rely on? They're so moronic, they don't even know who they rely on. You know who they rely on? Philosophers like Rousseau and Hegel. And Marx stole from Hegel. All three white men, by the way, just want to remind the left. And that's the modern-day Democratic Party. That man gives us rights. And we need the right man. Certain types of men. So, in other words, it's a very dangerous ideology, and it's preposterous. Now, what do you think about that relies on John Locke and Aristotle and those? Follow me carefully. Now we get into a really smart part. If colleges are actually teaching this subject, they should be teaching something like this. Listen to this. Reason cannot by itself explain why there's reason. Science cannot by itself explain why there's science. Man's discovery and application of science are products of reason. Reason and science can explain the existence of matter, but they can't explain why there is matter. They can explain the existence of the universe, but they can't explain why there's a universe. They can explain the existence of nature and the law of physics, but they cannot explain why there is nature and the law of physics. They can explain the existence of life, but they cannot explain why there is life. They can explain the existence of consciousness, but they cannot explain why there's consciousness. Science is a critical aspect of human existence, but it cannot address the spiritual and moral nature of man. In this respect, science is a dead end, around which the atheists refuse to reason. Reason itself informs man of his own limitations, and in doing so, directs him to the discovery of a force greater than himself. A supernatural force responsible for the origins of not only human existence, but all existence. And which itself has always existed and will always exist. These are my opinions of liberty and tyranny, but they were also the opinions of the founders of Europe. For us, the supernatural reveals itself in the Creator, God. Man seeks God's guidance through faith and prayer. The agnostic accepts the supernatural, but is not sure of the form of its existence. The deist accepts that God created the universe and man's condition, but left it to man to sort things out through reason. But man is more than a physical creature.
Well, I first met her in Tucson. We drank for 2 days straight. She told me one day she'd be staying in this cabin for a few weeks when she woke up to shots outside. Full bounty hunters, nasty ones. So she called back.
The French Revolution is strong.
Tells them to send some real men to send little boys. And quickly dumped them into the cell. Of course, the French Revolution was in place. And every now and again, she yells back kill them, and they can't work out how these bullets
What did he say?
This
There's
ain't
but
much
one
more than a
law for all,
one-room shack.
namely the law which governs all law.
Quick
The law of our
thinking,
Creator, the law of humanity, justice, equity,
So in
the
the
law of
end,
nature,
too much
innovation.
left of the door, and
This
Barry had
is
to
the
decide,
natural law
who the
that
hell is
penetrates
she?
man's being,
Before
of which the founding fathers, my words, adopted as
from
the
under the
principle
floorboard,
around which
and they're all dead on the
civilized
ground.
American society would be
Apparently,
organized.
she lined up all the
Our
copies and
Declaration of
nailed the
Independence,
poster to one of
which
their
was the
heads.
consensus position of the colonists,
These
appeals
days, she's almost a
specifically to the laws of
celebrity.
nature and
Even seen
nature's
her
God.
picture on a
It
cigarette
reminds her
card.
that we hold these
Strange
truths
how
to be
that
self-evident,
works.
that all
For the
men are
longest
created
time, they
equal,
reviled
that they are
you.
endowed by
But
their
if you're
Creator
bad
with
enough
certain
and
unalienable
bad
rights,
enough,
that
they
among
start
these are life,
revering you.
liberty, and the pursuit of
Guess
happiness.
that's
That's John
America.
Locke. The founders were enlightened men, but not purely of the
Well,
age of
anyway,
enlightenment.
we
They were
should be
highly
getting things
educated,
fixed up
well-informed
around
men
here.
who excelled at reason and subscribed to science, but worshipped neither.
How
They comprehended them, their strengths as well as weaknesses. At least two founders, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, are widely believed to have been deists.
You don't know me,
They were men of varying
Oh,
denomination, but united and emphatic in the belief that the Creator was the origin of their existence and the source of their reason. Look, I'm not preaching religion here, although I'm a man of faith. I'm telling you your history. But you know, at least I can sound like is eviscerated or obliterated by numbskull on MSNBC from Glue. Now, ready to go deeper with me? Come on, this is fun. Is it possible there is no natural law and man can know moral order and unalienable rights from his own reasoning, unaided by the supernatural or God?
Just
There are, of
isn't
course,
your day
those
today.
authorities in this case, including the atheists and others who attempt to distinguish natural law from divine providence. It is not the view adopted by the founders. This position would, it seems, lead man to arbitrarily create his own morality and rights, or create his own arbitrary morality and rights. Right and wrong, just and unjust, good and bad would be relative concepts susceptible to circumstantial applications. We see it all over the world. We see it all over the world. Moreover, by what justification would life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness be unalienable rights if there is no natural law? If reason alone cannot make them inviolable, what then is natural law if its origin is unknown or rejected? It is nothing more than a human construct. An individual may benefit from the moral order and unalienable rights around which society functions while rejecting their divine origin. But the civil society cannot organize itself that way. It will become unstable and vulnerable to anarchy and tyranny, imperiling all within it, especially the individual. The abandonment of natural law is the adoption of tyranny in one form or another, because there is no humane or benevolent alternative to natural law. Now, some resist the idea of natural law's relationship to divine providence, for they fear it leads to intolerance, even theocracy. They have it backwards. If man is endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, he is endowed with these rights no matter his religion, or whether he has allegiance to any religion, or whether he believes in God. It is natural law divine by God and discoverable by reason that prescribes the inalienability of the most fundamental and eternal human rights, rights that are not conferred on man by man, and therefore cannot legitimately be denied to man by man. Liberty. Individual liberty. Free will. We don't get that from Congress. We don't get that from the Supreme Court. We don't get that from Marxist dictators or fascists. Where does it come from? Now, people may be atheists, that's fine. They may not believe in God, they may not know what they believe. Yeah. But this society, this culture, was created around the belief that God created these principles. And it is the divine nature of natural law that makes permanent man's right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The last sentence of the Declaration of Independence the founders proclaimed, and for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
You came back after last time, right?
Let's go, Dan. Thanks God every day.
This time, partner.
Thanks God every day. But the benevolence of Christians and their faith. Despite its different denominations, Christianity was and is America's dominant religion. There's no dispute that Judeo-Christian vows and traditions have and do influence America's fundamental laws and policies.
However, despite its varying practices and applications in the colonies in the early years of the states, Christianity itself does not preach operational dominance over the body politic or seek justification from it, even while it promotes and defends its teaching from proselytism and activism. In contrasting Christianity to, say, Islam, in this respect, Alexis de Tocqueville observed that Muhammad professed to derive from heaven, and he has inserted in the Quran not only a body of religious doctrines, but political maxims, social and criminal laws, theories of science. The gospel, the Christian gospel, on the contrary, speaks of the general relations of men to God and to each other, beyond which it inculcates and imposes no point of faith, which is why we have the First Amendment, the free exercise of religion. It doesn't say the free exercise of Christianity.
Not quite sure what kind of black magic rock that was, but come on, raise stakes. Let's go.
Because they want to trash and smear Christianity. Now,
come on, you can make yourself some money.
This is Arlington National Cemetery. Once you look at Arlington National Cemetery,
that's what I like to hear.
I want you to look at this. Row after row.
We'll do the birds again. First to knock 4 out of heaven gets the win.
The vast majority of those headstones.
Stand close. As soon as you see them, start shooting.
Not all of them.
Wait for it. There they go.
The vast majority of Christian nationalism.
Well, I hope that felt good, feller.
We're so responsible.
Here you go. As promised.
Cemetery, my question to you is this. You think those people there, many of them died 17, 18, 20, 25, 30 years old, you think they were privileged?
Careful now. Next time I may not hold that. This is just had the man. Yeah, right. Enjoy your weed while it lasts. You talked a big game, friend.
Universal truths.
That weren't good at all. Please, I'll let you know. You throw yourself to the
What?
You calling me a child?
I read. I'm obsessed with reading. I'm obsessed with knowledge, and not just people I might agree with.
You're poking a dangerous animal, my friend. I'd proceed with due caution.
Science, philosophy.
No, I can't tell what's worse. You or you shoot. Your guess is as good as mine. Oh, you're gonna get it now.
It's just using the technology that they have developed. And now their nuclear technology. And I wanted to bring a great expert on the program to talk about this. Robert Greenway, former National Security Council Senior Director under President Trump, one of the principal architects of the Abraham Accords, Director of the Allison Center for National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Robert Greenway, I am not watching the media ringing the bells, banging the pots and pans that Iran is a blink away. We're going to wake up one day, oh my God, they have 7 nuclear missiles. I'm not hearing a thing from the White House, despite the fact that, quote-unquote, Admiral Kirby is over there and should be informing the American people what's coming, because it's coming. I'm not hearing a thing from Joe Biden. All I'm seeing is the constant campaign trashing the state of Israel, kissing up to the Islamic State of Iran, while they're building not just theoretical anymore, they are on the precipice. What do you make of all this? Well, particularly, as always, you're 100% correct, and I'm concerned too. But the reason I think they're not calling attention to it is because their partners in the government are complicit. Look, the Biden administration, as we all know, you know certainly better than most, they're paying for it. By not enforcing existing sanctions, we've subsidized the program. So not only they engage in terrorism throughout the region, but they're also developing, and they are a hair's breadth away. Look, if they don't test a weapon by the end of the year, it's only their incompetence that prevents them from doing it. And it might, but it might not. And as you stated, they have the delivery systems already in the inventory that could reach Europe and certainly Israel. And unlike other states, including North Korea, they have the stated intent and the motive to use it. And so it's an incredibly dangerous time. And let me add, too, that this was the last conversation that I had with the president, the Oval Office, before leaving the administration, was addressing this particular issue. And so this has been something we've watched for a long time. But I think successive administrations in the U.S. have stated this is unacceptable for a reason. And the reason is they would have control over the global energy market and a significant portion of the world's trade. We do not want to give the regime the ability to do that and to attack Israel and the United States.
And yet, the Biden administration is coddling Iran. Even though Iran is attacking our armed forces through its surrogates, the Biden administration has paid for the October 7th attack on Israel. It has paid effectively for the weapons being used against our troops and our sailors. It has paid for them to rearm themselves, build up their economy, and it has just they're paying for this nuclear arms program. And the Biden administration has the worst possible human being on the face of the earth negotiated on our behalf. Robert Malley has been given a book, or some kind of secret process. His classification has been pulled, and he brought 3 people in, at least one of whom was back-channeling to the foreign minister of Iran. This makes the outer in this case look like a joke. What do you think of this?
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we outsourced our negotiations to Iran, to Iranians that were acting, by all accounts, appearing under the direction and control, certainly coordinating their public positions with the government of Iran. It's inexplicable to me, but the outcome bears all evidence of it. And so if you look at what resulted, when we transitioned administrations, they were enriching to less than 4%. Now they're enriching to 60% eventually, but we tested, and the IEA has reported over 83%. They had 500 centrifuges in operation when we transitioned and the inauguration occurred. Now they're over 5,000. And so again, what has happened is not the withdrawal of the JCPOA, as they like to claim. The reality is the policy of appeasement has funded the expansion of the program, and that's exactly what's resulted.
So this administration runs to the UN, and they want a ceasefire resolution against Israel. This administration is now investigating Jewish citizens in Judea and Samaria. External executive authority of this administration, their State Department is conducting an investigation of Israel, quote-unquote, and potential war crimes. This administration is now demanding that Israel present it with a list of what weapons it will now receive. The administration is trying to organize Europe and the Arab countries to unilaterally recognize a separate Palestinian state that will be a Palestinian terrorist state, all the while lifted all the restrictions on Iran that is a whisper away from having nuclear weapons. My question to you is this: where is the counter pressure coming from? I don't even hear Republicans talking about this.
You're absolutely right. And to a certain extent, this has now become a domestic political issue for the left. The president is their challenge now to make sure they've got a turnout for this organization. The reality is, you're exactly right. The government of Iran was subverting our partners and allies in Israel at a time when they did over a year ago. And believe me, no one in the nation understands exactly why this is happening. They have no expectations that the administration came in, but I think they were shocked that they were able to undermine our partner and ally in Jerusalem and supporting the government in Tehran. And the results, again, bear evidence of it. And I think what's going to happen in the next phase of this, inevitably, as Israel finishes the job in Rafah, we're now likely to see Hezbollah initiate operations, and Israel will have to respond. And I think a ground operation in southern Lebanon is an almost certainty. And when that occurs, it's going to be hard to put this back in the bottle.
You get this 10-year-old country with a very small population, a small military base. They rely on us in many respects when they purchase certain armaments and so forth. The only country standing in the United States, in my view, his behavior, his conduct, I'll say this, is truly, in my view, treasonous. You cannot have a commander-in-chief who has an administration, a department of a state, is enabling, funding the terrorist activities of funding the nuclear programs, if not directly, indirectly, of a state that is threatening us. We'll be right back.
By over 1 million different users. The following actions were carried out by the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade of Ukraine. Our man managed to live and is in good health after successfully fending off the assaults of 10 intruders. In cold blood, he forced the adversary to flee, defended his position, and waited for reinforcements to arrive until they arrived. Today is the 2nd anniversary of our trial list, and courage is a struggle against the enemy of Soren, not only for the sake of freedom and self-determination, but also for the sake of the right to life. One of the 100 or 1,000 pieces of evidence is this. During this vigorous onslaught, it is not certain which French line the Ukrainian armed forces utilized. The claims, on the other hand, indicate that this operation was conducted under the Donets France name. In addition, the following statements were made by the military specialist who stated their opinion on the topic. All of the statements that follow when we take a closer look at the operations that were carried out by Ukrainian forces, we see that they were executed courageously and with careful planning. On the other hand, Russian soldiers are inexperienced and do not place any importance on strategy in their actions. Once we take into consideration the fact that Russian forces have not been able to achieve their objectives in the conflicts that have taken place up to this point, we will arrive at the appropriate conclusion. The process will most likely be carried out for a considerable amount of time. Already, a disturbing chain of vulnerabilities has been identified in the Russian soldier states. These vulnerabilities have been discovered. To tell you the truth, weaknesses will only become more pronounced as the process continues. It is highly unlikely that the Russian leadership in the world took any action. At the same time that Ukrainian soldiers are continuing to respond to strikes on the front lines that have been carried out by Russian soldiers, drones belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing to strike significant targets within Russian territory. A number of drones belonging to the Ukrainian armed forces have been successful in reaching the Russian aircraft industry in recent days. Mandarin vehicles belonging to the Ukrainian army were successful in their attempt to strike an iron industrial complex located within the Russian border.
Council Committee and Jim Florentine, Judge Binal. So Jim,
successful in their attempt to strike an iron industrial.
He said very specifically, depending on the questions you ask, you could be arrested or not. And I said, listen to what they're saying. You're saying the U.S. government has control over my questions. They'll arrest me if I ask the wrong question. How are we better than Putin if that's true? Killing Navalny during the Munich Security Conference in the middle of a debate over $60 billion in Ukraine funding? Maybe the Russians are dumb. I didn't get that vibe at all. It is to affect the election outcomes of a way that we do it a lot and have for 80 years. Following this conversation with Tucker Carlson, a highly influential and often controversial political commentator. When he was at Fox, Time magazine called him the most powerful conservative in America. After Fox, he has continued to host big, impactful interviews and shows on X, on the Tucker Carlson podcast, and on TuckerCarlson.com. I recommend subscribing, even if you disagree with his views. It is always good to explore diversity of perspectives. Most recently, he interviewed the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We discussed this topic of Russia, Putin, Navalny, and the war in Ukraine at length in this conversation. Please allow me to say a few words about the very fact that I did this interview. I have received a lot of criticism, publicly and privately, when I announced that I will be talking with Tucker. For people who think I shouldn't do the conversation with Tucker, or generally think that there are certain people I should never talk to, I'm sorry, but I disagree. I will talk to everyone, as long as they're willing to talk genuinely in long form for 2, 3, 4 or more hours. I will talk to Putin and to Zelensky, to Trump and to Biden, to Tucker, and to Jon Stewart, AOC, Obama, and many more people with very different views on the world. I want to understand people and ideas. That's what long-form conversations are supposed to be all about. Now, for people who criticize me for not asking tough questions,
I hear you, but again, I disagree. I do often ask tough questions, but I try to do it in a way that doesn't shut down the other person, putting them into a defensive state where they give only shallow talking points. Instead, I'm looking always for the expression of genuinely held ideas and the deep roots of those ideas. Done well, this gives us a chance to really hear out and to begin to understand what and how they think. And to trust the intelligence of you to make up your own mind, to see through the bullshit, to the degree there's bullshit, and to see to the heart of the person. Sometimes I feel like this, but I'll continue working my ass off to improve. All that said, I find that this no tough questions criticism often happens when the guest is a person the listener simply hates and wants to see them grilled into embarrassment, called a liar, a greedy egomaniac, a killer, maybe even an evil human being, and so on. If you are such a listener, what you want is drama, not wisdom. In this case, this show is not for you. There are many shows you can go to for that, with hosts that are way more charismatic and entertaining than I'll ever be. If you do stick around, please know I will work hard to do this well and to keep improving. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your support.
Thank you.
I love you all.
I love you.
This is the Lex Figment Podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description.
Support it. Fuck
and
that,
now,
Lex.
Dear friends, here's Tucker Carlson. What was your first impression when you met
Me.
Vladimir Putin for the interview? I thought he seemed nervous, and I was very surprised by that. And I thought he seemed like someone who overthought it a little bit and had a plan, and I don't think that's the right way to go into any interview. My strong sense, having done a lot of them for a long time, is that it's better to know what you think, to say, you know, as much as you can, honestly, so you don't get confused by your own lies, and just to be yourself. And I thought that he went into it like an over-prepared student, and I kept thinking, why is he doing this? But, you know, I guess because he thought a lot of people were going to see it. But he was also probably prepared to give you a full lesson in history, as he did. Well, I was totally shocked by that, and very annoyed, because I thought he was filibustering. I thought he would, I mean, I asked him, as I usually do, the most obvious, how would you do this? And he had said in a speech that I think is worth reading, I don't speak Russian, so I haven't heard the original, but he had said at the moment of the beginning of the war, he had given this address to Russians, in which he explained to the fullest extent we have seen so far why he was doing this. And he said in that speech, I fear that NATO, the West, the United States, the Biden administration, will preemptively attack us. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I can't evaluate whether that's a fear rooted in reality or one rooted in paranoia, but I thought, well, that's an answer right there. And so I alluded to that in my question, and rather than answering it, we went off on this long, from my perspective, kind of tiresome, sort of greatest hits of Russian history, and the implication, I thought, was, well, Ukraine is ours, or Eastern Ukraine is ours already. And I thought he was doing that to avoid answering the question. So, you know, the last thing you want when you're interviewing someone is to get rolled. And I didn't want to be rolled, so I, a couple of times, interrupted him politely, I thought, but he wasn't having it. And then I thought, you know what, I'm not here to prove that I'm a great interviewer. It's kind of not about me. I want to know who this guy is. I think a Western audience, a global audience, has a right to know more about the guy, and so just let him talk. You know, because it's not, you know, I don't feel like my reputation's on the line. People have already drawn conclusions about me, I suppose, to the extent they have. I'm not interested really in those conclusions anyway. So just let him talk. And so I calmed down and just let him talk, and in retrospect, I thought that was really, really interesting. You know, whether you agree with it or not, or whether you think it's relevant to the war in Ukraine or not. That was his answer, and so it's inherently significant.
Well, you said he was nervous. Were you nervous? Were you afraid? This is Vladimir Putin.
I wasn't afraid at all, and I wasn't nervous at all.
Did you drink tea before?
No, I did my normal regimen of nicotine pouches and coffee. No, I'm not a tea drinker. I try not to eat, all the sweets they put in front of us, which is that is my weakness, is eating crap. But you eat a lot of sugar, as you know, before an interview, and it does dull you. So I successfully resisted that. But I wasn't nervous. I wasn't nervous the whole time. I said, why would I? I'm 54. My kids are grown. I believe in God. I'm almost never nervous. But no, I wasn't nervous. I was just interested. I'm interested in Soviet history. I studied it in college. I've read about it my entire life. My dad, was a constant topic of conversation. And so to be in the Kremlin, in a room where Stalin made decisions, either wartime decisions or decisions about murdering his own population, I just couldn't get over it. We're in Molotov's old office. So for me, I was just blown away by that. I thought I knew a lot about Russia. It turns out I knew a lot about the Soviet period, the 1937 purge trials, the famine in Ukraine. I knew a fair amount about that, but I really knew nothing about contemporary Russia, less than I thought I did, as it turned out. And I was just blown away by where we were, and that's kind of one of the main drivers at this stage in my life. That's why I do what I do, is because I'm interested in stuff, and I want to see as much as I can and try and draw conclusions from it to the extent I can. So I was very much caught up in that, but no, I wasn't nervous. I didn't think he's going to kill me or something, and I'm not particularly afraid of that anyway. So, not really. No. I mean, again, it's it's an age and stage in life thing. I mean, I've 4 children, so there were times when they were little where I was terrified of dying, because if I died, it would have huge consequences. But no, I mean, at this point, I don't want to die. I'm really enjoying my life, but I've been with the same girl for 40 years, and I have 4 children who I'm extremely close to. Well, now 5, a daughter-in-law, and I love them all. I'm really close to them. I tell them I love them every day. I've had a really interesting life.
What was the goal? Just linger on that. What was the goal for you? How were you thinking about it? What would success be like in your head leading into it?
To bring more information to the public. Yeah, that's it. I mean, I have really strong feelings about what's happening, not just in Ukraine or Russia, but around the world. I think the world is resetting to the grave disadvantage of the United States. I don't think most Americans are aware of that at all. And so that's my view, and I've stated it many times, because it's sincere. But my goal was to have more information brought to the West so people could make their own decisions about whether this is a good idea. I mean, a war in Ukraine from the American perspective, which is, a tiny group of dumb people in Washington has decided to do this for reasons they won't really explain, and you don't have a role in it at all as an American citizen, as the person who's paying for it, whose children might be drafted to fight it, to shut up and obey. I just reject that completely. I guess I'm a child of a different era. I'm a child of participatory democracy to some extent, where your opinion as a citizen is not irrelevant. And so I'm just, and I guess the level of lying about it was starting to drive me crazy. And I've said, and I will say again, I am not an expert on the region, or really any region other than, say, Western Maine. I just don't, I'm not Russian. And, but it was obvious to me that we were being lied to in ways that were just, it was crazy, the scale of the lies. I'll give you an example. The idea that Ukraine would inevitably win this war, victory was never, as it never is, defined precisely. Nothing's ever defined precisely, which is always a tell that there's deception at the heart of the claim. But Ukraine's on the verge of winning. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm hardly a tactician or military expert. For the 5th time, I'm not an expert on Russia or Ukraine. I just look at Wikipedia. Russia has 100 million more people than Ukraine. 100 million. It has much deeper industrial capacity, more material capacity than all of NATO combined. For example, Russia is turning out artillery shells, which are significant in the ground war, at a ratio of 7 to 1 compared to all NATO countries combined. That's all of Europe. Russia is producing 7 times the artillery shells as all of Europe combined? What? That's an amazing fact, and it turns out to be a really significant fact. In fact, the significant fact. But if you ask your average person in this country, even a fairly well-informed person of good faith who's just trying to understand what's going on, who's going to win this war? well, Ukraine's going to win. They're on the right side. And they think that because our media really just do serve the interests of the U.S. government, period. They are state media in that sense. I've told them that for over 2 years. And I was in Hungary last summer talking to the Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, who's whatever you think, he's a very smart guy. Very smart guy. Like smart on a scale that we're not used to in our leaders. And I said to him off camera, so is Ukraine going to win? And he looked at me like that. It's deranged. It's generally division. Are they going to win? It's tiny compared to Russia. Russia has a wartime economy. Ukraine has a common economy. It's like we don't have a story. And I said to him, I think most Americans put that in his head. You'll see that in all the news channels. Tell them that. Because it's written exclusively in world terms, and it's Churchill versus Hitler, and of course Churchill's got to win. And it's just so dishonest. And it doesn't even matter what I want to happen, what I think about happen. That's a distortion of what is happening. And if I have any job at all, I don't know what I do have a job is to just try to be honest. And that's why there is States. I guess that conversation needs to begin by defining terms. And the key term is win. What does that mean? Peace, a ceasefire, who owns which land, yes. Coming to the table with, as you call the parent, the United States, yes. Putting leverage on the negotiation to make sure there's fairness. Amen. Well, of course, and I should just restate this, I am not emotionally involved in this. I'm American in every sense, and my only interest is in America, not leaving ever. And so I'm looking at this purely from our perspective, what's good for us. But also as a guinea pig, I hate war, and anybody who doesn't hate war shouldn't have power. Right? So I agree with that definition. A victory is like not killing an entire generation of your population. It's not being completely destroyed to be eaten up by BlackRock or whatever comes next for them. So, yeah, we were close to that a year and a half ago, and the Biden administration dispatched Boris Johnson, the briefly Prime Minister of the UK, to stop it and to say to Zelensky, who I feel sorry for, by the way, because he's caught between these forces that are bigger than his, to say, no, you cannot come to any terms with Russia. And the result of that has not been a Ukrainian victory, it's just been more dead Ukrainians and a lot of profit for the West. It's a moral crime, in my opinion. And I tried to ask Boris Johnson that because why wouldn't I? After he denounced me as a tool of the criminal or something, and he demanded $1 million to talk to me. And this just happened last week. And by the way, I'm right too. I'm not just for the record. And you paid. And I said to his guy, I said, I just interviewed you. I didn't recognize as a bad guy. If he did it for free, and he demanded $1 million and said this was profit, like at the time, Boris Johnson's and so I guess these are really, it's not just about Boris Johnson, a sad, rapacious fraud machine, obviously, but it's about like the future of the West and the future of Ukraine, this country that purportedly didn't care so much about it. We're dying and like what is dead. It's also deranged that I didn't imagine and don't imagine that I would add any bring to the conversation because I'm not a genius, okay? But I felt like I could, at the very least, puncture some of the whys, and that's an inherently absolutely said that he was completely satisfied because of the rest of the
You a new or something? This night folk country.
Night folk. I can look after myself. Okay. Maybe you should clear out those. So trouble makes things night.
It's night folk. Now what? Stay on my property. Hey, would you get him off? I'll pay you for your trouble.
But the last interview we did with English Western
you pay me,
was like any of the other interviews.
Maybe. Gonna show me where this place is. We'll see.
It was up to see. Right. It was all about him. Like,
You good man, partner.
I just feel like that's the most tiresome thing is that dinner. It's not about it.
Them nice folk was putting me on. They got their paws on me. Hang me up on a hardwood hammock. Boy, I ain't dead as it is.
And I just want to hear from him.
And I have bad folk. And a lot of them. You know, I ain't never heard no nice folk speak. There's not been one peep out of no nice folk. Not that I ain't heard it, at least. Imagine not uttering a sound. Can you fathom that? What kind of evil don't make no sound? It's bad, all right. Bad. I mean, I don't meet many folk out here on my own, but I still, you know, I talk to myself, ain't no one else around. Shoot my own goddamn hero.
I can imagine.
Now, used to be, the Gators was the worst thing in the volume. Gators was serious. I've been snake bitten more times than I can remember. Ain't been gator bit, though. Got that to be thankful for, at least. Gator bites is nasty. And turtle bites is bad, too. They call them snapping for a reason.
Yeah, I want to snap, too.
But other than that, I really wanted to keep it to the things that I think matter most.
Yes,
you know,
that's probably best.
In the moment, what was your gut? Did you want to ask some tough questions as follow-ups on certain topics? Or would it mean to ask a tough question, clarifying questions, I suppose? I guess. I just wanted to talk. You know, I just wanted to hear his perspective. Again, I've probably asked more asshole questions than like any living American. You know, I'm, as has been noted correctly, I'm a dick by my nature, and so I just feel at this stage of my life I didn't need to prove that I'm fine with talking. Is that a question? Sure. You know, I think if I had been, 34 instead of 54, I definitely would have done that, because I would have thought this is really about getting hold of myself. I was like, there's a war going on. That is wrecking at a scale people do not understand. The US dollar is going away. That's, of course, inevitable ultimately, because everything does, including currencies. That death, that process of death, has been accelerated exponentially by the behavior of the Biden administration and the U.S. Congress, particularly the sanctions. And people don't understand what the ramifications of that are. The ramifications are poverty in the United States. Okay, so I just wanted to get to that because I'm coming at this from not a global perspective. I'm coming at it from an American perspective.
So you mentioned Navalny. After you left, Navalny died in prison.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on is that high level first on his death?
It's awful. Imagine dying in prison. I've thought about it a lot. I've known a lot of people in prison. A lot, including some very good friends of mine. So I thought this is really sad about it. From a geopolitical perspective, I laugh at it, sort of resent, but mostly if I'm using claims by American politicians who really are the dumbest politicians that are this happened, and here's what it means. And it's like, actually, as a factual matter, we don't know what happened.
I knew
we don't know what happened. We have a freaking idea what happened. We did say, and I did say, and I will say again, I didn't deserve this. Opposition figures in prison.
Now, come on.
Period. It happens a lot around the world. It happens in this country, as you know, and I'm against all of it. But do we know what died? Now, if I could guess, I would say killing Navalny during the Munich Security Conference, and then we paid $60 billion. Maybe the Russians are dumb. I didn't get that vibe at all. I don't see it, but maybe they killed him. I mean, they certainly put him in prison, which I'm against. But here's what I do know, is that we don't know. And so when Chuck Schumer stands up and Joe Biden reads some card in front of him with lines about Navalny, and it's like, I don't want to laugh at that because it's absurd. You don't know.
There's a lot of interesting ideas about if he was killed, who killed him. Because it could be.
Slow down.
It could be It could be Ukrainians, because it would benefit the war if they killed Dugan's daughter in Moscow. That's possible.
My God, see.
I don't think we kill people.
Nah,
What a place to make your home.
It's not safe.
30 years and it's shameful. I can say that as an American because it's my money and my name. Yeah, I'm really offended by that. And I never thought that was true. And I spent, again, much older than you, and so I spent my worldview was defined by the Cold War. And very much in the house I lived in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. That's what we talked about. And the left at the time, I don't know, the wacko MIT professor who I never had any respect for, interviewed, etc. Like the hard left was always saying, the United States government is interfering in other elections, and I just dismissed that as stupid and actually a slander against my country. But it turned out to all be true, or substantially true, anyway. And that's been a real shock for me. But anyway, as to Navalny, I don't know. We should always be on the basis of what we do know, which is to say on the basis of truth. And if you have an entire policy-making apparatus that is making the biggest decisions on the face of the planet, on the basis of things like bullshit,
you go deal with that. I'll be here with my
Okay, do what you can.
where we are. Things that bother you, that the most famous opposition figure in Russia is sitting in prison. Well, of course it does. Of course it bothers me. It bothered me when I got there. It bothers me now. I was sad when he died. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the measures that's one of the basic measures of imprisoning people are you imprisoning people who pose a physical risk to you? There's some subjective decision-making involved in these things. However, big picture, yeah, you have opposition leaders in jail. It's not a politically free society, and Russia isn't. And this is a friend of mine from childhood, American, actually, wonderful person who lives in Russia, which is Russian, Moscow, which is Russian white. And I had dinner with him. He's a very balanced guy, totally not a political person. And speaks Russian and loves his Russian children and loves the culture. And there's a lot to love. The culture that produces Tolstoy. It's not a gas station we do about the story. Only a moron would say that. It's a very deep culture. I don't fully understand it, but I admire it. I asked him what he said. Russian mind is not exactly the sense of some Western European city. Quite European. And very, very complicated. Very complicated. It's too complicated. Just don't get involved. And I would just say two things. One, I'm not sure. I mean, but my strong sense is that Navalny's death, whoever did it, probably didn't have a lot to do with the. My sense from talking to people around him is they're not really focused on that. In fact, I asked one of the when's the last and I asked him so, not the election, right? In the sense of second, I was struck with so many things that but one thing I noticed was the total absence of cult of personality propaganda, which I expected to see. And I've seen around the world. Jordan, in every building there are pictures of things that and that's a sign of political insecurity. You don't create a cult of personality unless you're personally insecure, and also unless you're worried about losing your power. None of that. It's interesting, and I expected to see a lot of it. Like statues of Odin. Anybody other like Christian saints. So that was quite true. I'm just reporting what I saw. So yes, it's not in a political sense, it's not a free country. It's not a democracy in the way that I would understand it. I don't want to live there, okay? Because I'd like to say what I think. In fact, I think that. but it's not Stalinist in a recognized way.
No, that's some good stuff right there. You good man,
This
Mr.
question about the
Damn
freedom of
decent.
is unreliable.
Don't worry about that.
You might not need to ask
Food
the
for the
volume
gators.
question, but did you feel like, are there things I shouldn't say? I mean, I don't want to I mean it when I say I felt not one twinge of concern for the 8 days that I was there. Maybe I just didn't, and I feel like I've got a pretty strong gut sense of things. I rely on it. I make all my decisions based on how I feel, my instincts, and I didn't feel it at all. My lawyers before I left, and these are people who are big law firms. This is not Bob's law firm. This is one of the biggest law firms in the world. Said you're going to get arrested if you do this by the U.S. government.
Good night.
Where are you going?
To bed. Guess what? You'll never guess the movie that came on after this. I just left out because I leave it back.
As good as it gets.
No, Overboard.
I knew it had to be the.
It came on. I couldn't believe it.
And you watched that too?
I can't. I gotta go to church. We have that movie.
Wow, it's really up your alley.
But that was, it was, let me put it this way, I don't know what you know, lawyers, but it costs many thousands of dollars to get a conclusion with that. Like they sent a whole bunch of their summer associates or whatever. They put a lot of people on this question, checked a lot of precedent, and they had a memo on it.
I can tell you they do.
And of course it made me mad, so I was lecturing on the phone, and I had another call.
That's all they do.
How will depend on the questions that you ask Putin. If you're seen as too nice to him, you could get arrested. I was like, you're describing a fascist country, okay? You're saying that the U.S. government will arrest me if I don't ask the questions they want to ask? Is that what you're saying? Well, we just think based on what's happened that that's possible.
Yeah. Oh,
and so,
man, I wish I didn't have to go anywhere.
I'm just telling you what happened.
So you were okay being arrested in Moscow?
I didn't think I was arrested. I didn't think that for a second. Maybe. I don't speak Russian. I'd never been there before. Everything about the culture was brand new to me. You know, ignorance doesn't protect. You sort of, when you have no freaking idea what's going on, you're not worried about it. Like, this has happened to me many times. There's a principle there that extends throughout life. So it's completely possible that I was in grave peril and didn't know it. Because, like, how would I know it? You know, I'm like a bumbling English speaker from California. But, I didn't.
What?
But the lawyers did. Yeah, I mean, it scared the crap out of people. You're gonna.
You saw them?
And you have to pay cash. They don't take
Well, it's probably the man.
And you have to go through all these hoops, just procedural hoops to go to Russia, which I was willing to do because I wanted to interview them, because I can't. But then there's another fact, which is that I was being surveilled by the U.S. government, intensely surveilled by the U.S. government. And this came out, they admitted it. And
Cutting up the body. Who's this guy?
Said, oh, you're going and called other people. And my wife, two producers, that's it. So they got that and so we have a mutual friend, so I got his text going over it. And Snowden was not wanted at all.
Where they always are.
So we had dinner in my hotel room at the Four Seasons in Moscow. And I tried to convince him I'd love to interview, shoot on my iPhone, you know.
Cocaine.
Take a picture and get a photo on the internet because I just want to show support.
Maybe he's a vampire.
And living in Russia, doing tension, Russia. Anyway, whatever.
Doing the laundry.
Just said, respectfully, on and on. Anyway, great. It will be so too. And I didn't tell anybody.
Hold on.
Okay, except.
Where's my thing?
Semaphore runs this piece saying.
Here.
Reporting information they got from U.S. intel agencies, leaking against me,
Right.
my money, my name, in a supposedly free country. They run this piece saying I'd met with Snowden, like it was a crime or something. So again, my interest is in the United States and preserving freedoms here, the ones that I grew up with. And if you have a media establishment that acts as an auxiliary of or ex-employees of the national security state who don't have a free country. And that's where we are. And I'm not guessing, because I've spent my entire life in that world. 33 years I worked in big news companies, and so I know how it works. I know the people involved in it.
I swear to God, they were all the same size packages.
Among many others, and I find that really objectionable.
They look just like
not just on principle, either in effect and practice. Don't want to live in that kind of country. People are like, they externalize all of their anxiety about this. I have noticed. So it's like, Russia's not free. No, neither's Burkina Faso. Like, most countries aren't free, actually, but we are. We're the United States. We're different. And that's my concern. Preserving that is my concern. And so they get so exercised about what's happening in other parts of the world, places they've never been and nothing about. It's almost a way of ignoring what's happening in their own country right around them. I find it so strange and sad and weird.
So the NSA was tracking you? Do you think CIA was? Was these people still tracking you?
Look, one of the things I did before I went, just because the business I'm in, all of us are in, because we live here, we're all curious about secure communications channels. Like Signal is secure. Telegraph isn't, or WhatsApp is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. So I thought, before I go over here, I was getting all this, we're having all these conversations about issues right now. And I decided, I'm just going to actually find out what's going on. So I talked to two people. And that's all I can say, and I go and talk to people who don't like that too. And both of them said exactly the same thing, which is, you're joking. Nothing is secret. Everything is monitored all the time. If state actors are involved, you can keep the Malaysian mafia from reading your text, probably. You cannot keep the big intel services from reading your text. It's not possible. Any of them. Or listen to your calls. So, and that was the firm conclusion of people who've been involved in it, for a long time, decades ago. So, I just thought, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. I'm not sending a ton of naked pictures of myself to anybody. I'm 54, dude. Probably not too many. So I'm like, I'm just, so the guys I travel with, three people I work with who I love, who I've been around the world with for many years, I know them really well, and they all got, separate phones, whatever phone back in New York or whatever, and I just decided I don't care, naturally, and I resent having privacy.
Everybody's in now, huh? We have like 5 binocular sets. You couldn't find any?
I do switch them out because there it is.
Crazy.
Because if you have too much spyware on your phone, this is true, it wrecks the battery. And, no, I'm serious. It does. And it was, 5 or 6 years ago, in North Korea, and my phone started acting crazy. And so I talked to someone on the National Security Council who actually called me about this. Somehow knew that your phone is being surveilled by the South Korean government. I was like, I like the South Korean government. How do they do that? Because they won't mind information about it. So, but I could tell because all of a sudden that thing was drained in like 45 minutes. So that's a downside.
You keep switching phones, getting your phones to battery life.
Yeah, I try not to do it. I'm kind of flinty Yankee type in some ways, so I don't like to spend $1,000 with a freaking Apple corporation too often. But yeah, I do.
You say it lightly, but it's really troublesome that you as a journalist are being tracked.
Well, they leaked it to Semaphore, and they leaked it to the New York Times. But I would even put up, nothing I can do, so I have to put up with everything, okay? But I would probably not be actively angry about being surveilled, because I'm just so old that I actually do pay taxes. Sleeping with a makeup artist or whatever, so I don't care that much. The fact that they are leaking against me, that the intel services in the United States are actively engaged in U.S. politics and media, that's so unacceptable. That makes democracy impossible. And yet NBC News and the rest will defend it. And it's like, and not just on NBC News, by the way, on the supposedly conservative channels too, they will defend it. They're defending that. You can't have democracy if the intel intel services for tampering in elections and information. Period.
So you had no fear. You know, your lawyer said, be careful which questions you asked. You said, I don't have...
Well, the lawyer said, no, you think of the questions you asked. You know, you could be arrested or not. And I said, listen to what you're saying. You're saying the U.S. government has, like, control over my questions. They'll arrest me if I ask the wrong question. How are we better than Putin if that's true? And by the way, that's just what the lawyer said, but I can't overstate. One of the biggest law firms in the United States, smart lawyers we've used for years. So I was really shocked by it.
You said leaders kill, leaders lie.
Yeah. I don't believe in leaders very much. Like this whole, like, oh, Zelensky's Jesus and Putin's Satan. It's like, no, they're all leaders of countries, okay? Like, grow up a little bit, you child. Like, all of the... First of all, anyone who seeks power is damaged morally, in my opinion. You shouldn't be seeking power. You can't seek power or wealth for its own sake and remain a decent person. That's just true. So there aren't any, like, really virtuous billionaires, and there aren't any really virtuous world leaders. You have grades of virtue. Some are better than others, for sure. But, I mean, in other words, Zelensky may be better than Putin. I'm open to that possibility. But to claim that one is evil and the other is virtuous is like you're revealing that you're a child. You don't know anything about how the world actually is or what reality is. Like
That's quite a realist perspective, but there is a spectrum.
There's a spectrum, absolutely. I'm not saying they're all the same. They're not.
And our task is to figure out where on the spectrum they lie. And the leader's task is to confuse us and convince us they're one of the good guys.
But I actually reject even that formulation. It's always about the leaders. I mean, of course, the leaders...
Where the hell is my phone?
A good leader has a healthy country, and a bad leader has a decaying country, which is something that...
Let the dog out.
But it's about the ideas and the policies and the...
She wants to go out.
So we're very much caught up in the personalities of various leaders.
Where the hell is my phone? I thought you were heading towards the bathroom.
It's like, no, I ask a much more basic question. What are the fruits of their behavior? And I always make it personal because I think everything is personal. Does his wife respect him?
You are the one out, Jack. Get out of here. Hold on. Oh, Red's trying to sneak out.
Don't let him.
His children respect him. How are they doing? Is the country he runs
Don't let that sneaky Red out.
If your life expectancy is going down, if your suicide rate
Sneaky.
your standard of living is down, you're not a good leader. I don't care what you tell me.
Sneaky. They try to go behind you. When your legs are... Cody tries to slip around the heater. And when you got to stand sideways.
What's drug use like? Are people
Red's making his move.
Are people's children more likely to live in a freer, more prosperous society than you did and your grandparents did? Like, those are the only measures that matter to you. The rest is a lie. But anyway, the point is, we just get so obsessed with the theater around poor people. And we miss bigger things that are happening, and we allow ourselves to
The funniest thing I ever saw.
What?
thinking that what doesn't matter
I was going like this. Jack was standing there by the heater, and I was going like this to Red. Red was trying to sneak up to the door like this. And I was going, no, Red, no, go. And he wouldn't go. And Jack went, meow, and smacked him back.
But in the end, we should be able to measure, you know,
Like, you do what your mom says. Boom. And then Red ran off.
Where'd he go?
So I think we can say, as a factual matter, database.
I don't know how old they are. I think Red's older than Jack.
It did tell you how. Well, these are important moral victories.
Or they're both the same age.
Another lie. You know, long live the So I try to see the rest of the world that way, but more than anything, I try to see world events.
Mom said don't go.
Of an American, because I am one. And what does this mean for us? And it's not even the
Mom said no.
That will forever.
You get back.
The United States.
Now he's in my room.
The way our government operates. That more than any single thing in our lifetime. Screw the United States.
He's right here.
In the way that we did was crazy. And
I'm not letting you out, pal.
The takeaway from my 8 days in Moscow was not Putin. He's a leader with.
You can't go out.
Not ever that different, actually, in my pretty extensive experience. No, it was Moscow. That blew my mind. I was not prepared for that at all. And I thought I knew a lot about Moscow. My dad worked there on and off in the 80s and 90s. I was coming back to Moscow. It's a nightmare. All this stuff. No electricity.
I hope I wake up in time to go to church.
Exactly 2 years after sanctions. Totally cut off from Western financial systems. Kicked out of SWIFT. Can't use U.S. dollars. No banking. No credit.
What do you need to do, huh?
And that city, it just factually, I'm not endorsing the system. I'm not endorsing the whole country. I didn't go to Lake Baikal. You know, I didn't go to Turkmenistan. I just went to Moscow, largest city in Europe. 13 million people. I drove all around it. And that city is way nicer, outwardly, anyway, don't live there, than any city we have, by a lot. And by nicer, let me be specific. No graffiti, no homeless, no people using drugs in the street, totally tidy, no garbage on the ground, and no forest of steel and concrete soul-destroying buildings. None of the postmodern architecture that oppresses us without even our knowledge. None of that crap. It's a truly beautiful city. And that's not an endorsement of Putin. And by the way, it didn't make me love Putin. It made me hate my own leaders. Because I grew up in a country that had cities kind of like that were nice cities, that were safe. And we don't have that anymore. And how did that happen? Did Putin do that? I don't think Putin did that, actually. I think the people in charge of it, the mayors, the governors, the president, they did that. And they should be held accountable for it.
So I think cleanliness and architectural design is not the entirety of the metrics that matter when you measure a city.
They're the main metrics that matter. They're the main metrics that matter. The main metrics that matter are cleanliness, safety, and beauty, in my opinion. And one of the big lies that we are told in our world is that, no, something you can't measure that has no actual effect on your life matters most. Bullshit. What matters most, to say it again, beauty, safety, cleanliness. But lots of other things matter too. A whole bunch of things matter. But if I were to put them in order, it's not some theoretical, well, actually, I don't know if you know that the Duma has no power. Okay, I get that. Freedom of speech matters enormously to me. They have less freedom of speech in Russia than we do in the United States. We are superior to them in that way. But you can't tell me that living in a city where your 6-year-old daughter can walk to the bus stop and ride on a clean bus or ride in a beautiful subway car that's on time and not get assaulted, that doesn't matter. No, that matters almost more than anything, actually. And we can have both. And like the normal regime defenders and morons, Jon Stewart or whatever he's calling himself, they're like, well, that's the price of freedom. Like, people shitting on the sidewalk is the price of freedom. It's like, you can't fool me because I've lived here for 54 years. I know that it's not the price of freedom because I lived in a country that was both free and clean and orderly. So that's not a trade-off I think I have to make. You can't, that is the beauty of being a little bit older because you're like, no, I remember that actually. It wasn't what you're saying. We didn't have racial segregation in 1985. It was a really nice country that kind of respected itself. I was here. And I think with younger people, you can tell them that. And they're like, well, 1985, you were, selling slaves in Madison Square Garden. It's like, no, you weren't. You're going to Madison Square Garden and not stepping over a single fentanyl addict.
It is true. There doesn't have to be a trade-off between cleanliness and freedom of speech. But it is also true that in dictatorships, cleanliness and architectural design is easier to achieve and perfect, and often is done so you can show off, look how great our cities are, while you're suppressing.
Of course, I agree with that vehemently. This is not a defense of the Russian system at all. And if I felt that way, I would not only move there, but I would announce I was moving there. I'm not ashamed of my views. I never have been. And a lot of people are to my words. I'm like the one person in America you don't need to do that with. If you think I'm a racist, ask me, and I'll tell you.
Are you a racist?
No, I have a sexist.
Get my hands on some material.
Anyway, no, but if I was like a defender of Vladimir Putin, I would just say I'm defending Vladimir Putin now. I'm not. I am attacking our leaders, and I'm grieving over the low expectations of our people. You don't need to put up with this. You don't need to put up with foreign invaders stealing from you.
Can I ask you a
You know,
favor?
occupying
If
your
it's
kids' school.
convenient,
Your kids
I mean,
can't get an education because people from foreign countries broke our laws and showed up here and they've taken over the school. That's not a feature of freedom, actually. That's the opposite. That's what enslavement looks like. And so I'm just saying, raise your expectations a little bit. You can have a clean, functional, safe country. Crime is totally optional. Crime is something our leaders decide to have or not have. It's not something that just appears organically. I wrote a book about crime 30 years ago. I thought a lot about this. You have as much crime as you put up with, period. And it doesn't make you less free to not tolerate murder. In fact, it makes you unfree to have a lot of murders.
I'll slip these impressions pop.
And so but it makes me sad that people are like, well, you know, I guess this is, I can't, like, live in New York City anymore because of inflation and filth and illegal aliens and people shooting each other, but, you know, I'm glad because this is vibrant and strong and free. It's like, that's not freedom, actually, at all.
Your point is well taken. You can have both. Do you regret?
We had both. That's the point. We had both. I saw it.
Do you regret to a degree using the Moscow subway and the grocery store as a mechanism by which to make that point?
No.
Talk to you
I mean,
later.
I mean, look, I'm one of the more unself-aware people you will ever interview, so to ask me how will this be perceived, I literally have no idea.
You got guard duty again?
But
I like it.
I
ain't
was so shocked by it. I was so shocked by it.
Okay.
And there were two, and to the extent I regret anything and am to blame for anything, it would be not, and I've done this a lot, not giving it context, not fully explaining why are we doing this. The grocery store, I was shocked by the prices. And yes, I'm familiar with exchange rates, but very familiar with exchange rates. But those don't, and I adjusted them for exchange rates. And this is 2 years into sanctions, total isolation from the West. So I would expect, in fact, I did expect until I got there, that their supply chains would be crushed. How do you get good stuff if you don't have access to Western markets? And I didn't fully get the answer because I was occupied doing other things when I was there, but somehow they have. And that's the point. And they haven't had the supply chains problems that I predicted. In other words, sanctions haven't made the country noticeably worse. Okay, so again, this is commentary of the United States and our policymakers. Why are we doing this? It's forcing the rest of the world into a block against us called BRICS. They're getting off the U.S. dollar. That will mean a lot of dollars are going to come back here and destroy our economy and impoverish this country. So the consequences, the stakes are really high. They're huge. And we're not even hurting Russia. So, like, what the hell are we doing? One, on the subway, that subway was built by Joseph Stalin right before the Second World War. I'm not endorsing Stalin, obviously. Stalinism is a thing that I hate, and I don't want to come to my country. I'm making the obvious point that for over 80 years, you've had these frescoes and chandeliers, maybe they've been redone or whatever, but like somehow the society has been able to not destroy what its ancestors built, the things that are worth having, and there are a lot. And that, like, why don't we have that? And even on a much more terrestrial plane, like, why can't I have a subway station like that? Why can't my children who live in New York City ride the subway? A lot of people I know who live in New York City are afraid to ride the subway. Young women especially. That's freedom? No. Again, it's slavery. And if Putin can do this, why can't we? Like, what? It's not, in other words, I mean, this is like so obvious. I'm a traitor. Okay. So if I'm calling for American citizens to demand more from their government and higher standards for their own society, and remember that just 30 years ago we had a much different and much happier and cleaner and healthier society where everyone wasn't fat with diabetes at 40 from poisoned food. Like, how is that? I'm not a traitor to my country. I'm a defender of my country. By the way, the people calling me a traitor, they're all like, you know, they're not. I would not say they're people who put America's interests worst.
But
To put it mildly.
There's many elements, like you said, you don't like Stalinism. You know, you're a student of history. Central planning is good at building subways in a way that's really nice. The thing that accounts for New York subways, by the way, there's a lot of really positive things about New York subways, not cleanliness, but the efficiency, like the accessibility, how wide it spreads. Like that, the New York network is incredible. But Moscow, under different metrics, results of a capitalist system. And you actually said that you don't think U.S. is quite a capitalist system, which is an interesting question itself.
We have more central planning here than they do in Russia.
No, that's not true.
Of course it is.
You think that's true?
The climate agenda? Of course. They're telling the U.S. government has, in league with a couple of big companies, decided to change the way we produce and consume energy. There's no popular outcry for that. There's never been any mass movement of Americans who's like, I hate my gasoline-powered engine. No more diesel. That has been central planning. That is central planning. And you see it up and down our economy. There's no free market in the United States. You get crossways with the government, you're done. If you're at scale, I mean, maybe if you've got a barber shop or a liquor store or something, but even then, you're regulated by politicians. And so, no, I actually am for free markets. I hate monopolies. Our economy is dominated by monopolies. Completely dominated.
What do you mean?
Google. What percentage of search does Google have? 90? Google's a monopoly by any definition, and Google is just rich enough to continue doing whatever it wants in violation of U.S. law. So there's no monopoly in Russia as big as Google. I'm not, again, defending the Russian system. I'm calling for a return to our old system, which was sensible and moderate and put the needs of Americans at least somewhere in the top 10. Somewhere in the top 10. I'm not saying that Standard Oil was like interested in the welfare of average Americans, but I am saying that there was a constituency in our political system, in the Congress, for example, different presidential candidates were like, no, wait a second, what is this doing to people? Is it good for people or not? There's not even a conversation about that. It's like, shut up and submit to AI. And no offense. And so I'm just...
Offense taken. We will get you.
Yeah.
When it's strong. You'll be the first one to go.
Well, as a white man, I just won't even exist anymore.
Right. So much to say on that one.
I bet when you Google my picture, 20 years from now, it'll be a black chick. 100%!
I hope she's attractive.
I hope so, too. It'd probably be an upgrade.
The central planning point is really interesting, but I just don't, I don't know where you're coming from. There's a capitalist system. And the United States is one of the most successful capitalist systems in the history of Earth. So
what's the most successful? I'm just saying that I think it's changed a lot in the last 15 years, and that we need to update our assumptions about what we're seeing. And that's true up and down. That's true with everything. It's true with your neighbor's children who you haven't seen in 3 years, and they come home from Wesleyan, and you're like, oh, you've grown. That is true for the world around us as well. And most of our assumptions about immigration, about our economy, about our tax system are completely outdated if you compare them to the current reality. And so I'm just for updating my files, and I have a big advantage over you because I am middle-aged, and so I don't...
You called yourself old so many times throughout
I don't trust my perceptions of things, so I'm constantly trying to be like, is that true? I should go there. You know, I should see it. And I guess just in the end, I trust direct perceptions. Like, I don't trust the internet, actually. Wikipedia is a joke. Wikipedia could not be more dishonest. It's certainly in the political categories or things that I know a lot about. Occasionally I read an entry written about something that I saw or know people involved, and I'm like, that's a complete liar. You left out the most important fact. And it's like, it's not a reliable guide to reality or history. And that will accelerate with AI, where history, our perception of the past, is completely controlled and distorted. So I think just getting out there and seeing stuff, and seeing that Moscow was not what I thought it would be, which was a smoldering ruin, you know, rats in a garbage dump. It was nicer than New York. What the hell?
Direct data is good, but it's challenging. For example, if you talk to a lot of people in Moscow or in Russia, and you ask them, is there censorship? They will usually say, yes, there is.
Oh, yeah, of course there is. Well, I agree. I mean, just to be clear, I have no plans to move to Russia. I think I'd probably be arrested if I moved to Russia. Ed Snowden, who is the most famous sort of openness, transparency advocate in the world, I would say, along with Assange. Doesn't want to live in Russia. He's had problems with the Putin government. He's attacked Putin. They don't like it. I mean, I get it. I'm just saying, what are the lessons for us? And the main lesson is we are being lied to. Like, in a way that's bewildering and very upsetting. I was mad about it all 8 days I was there because I feel like I'm better informed than most people because it's my job to do it. And I'm skeptical of everything. And yet I was completely hoodwinked by it. I would just recommend to everyone watching this, like, you think you know, like, if you're really interested, if you're one of those people, I'm not one, but who's like waking up every day and you've got a Ukrainian flag on your mailbox or whatever, your Ukrainian lapel pin or absurd theater. But if you, like, sincerely care about Ukraine or Russia or whatever, why don't you just hop on a plane for $800 and go see it? Okay? That doesn't occur to anyone to do that. And I know it's time-consuming and kind of expensive, sort of, not really. But you benefit so much. I mean, I could bore you for like 8 hours. And I know you've had this experience where you think you know what something is, or you think you know who someone is, and then you have direct experience of that place or person, and you realize all your preconceptions were totally wrong. They were controlled by